Welcome to the Vegan Pulse. I am your host, Nancy Arenas. We are welcoming back Gabriel Gaarden for another segment of Making Sense with Gabriel. Stick around. We'll be right back. Welcome back, Gabriel. Nice to see you once again.
Great to see you, Nancy.
And today's question is, what is tofu anyway?
Awesome. Great question. And of course, I didn't know this question beforehand, so it'll be fun to come up with an answer extemporaneously. Wonderful. So tofu, I don't know if I have a perfect definition of tofu right off the top of my head.
Okay.
But tofu comes from a soybean, right? And what they do is you can just put whole soybeans in a blender and you can just blend them up basically into like a soybean smoothie. And then what you do from there is you filter out all of the, using like a cheesecloth, or maybe like a really fine mesh, sieve. You have to filter out all the water out of there. And then you get rid of all the fibrous content that gets held in, your filter. And then from that watery substance, you end up putting that in a probably even finer cheesecloth. And you allow all the extra water to seep out, and what you're left with is just the soy curd, essentially. And that's predominantly protein, but it also has some carbohydrate and fat in it. Soy is a relatively, it's rich in fat compared to most other legumes. Soy fits into the legume family. There's essentially 3 different kinds of legumes. You've got all your different kinds of beans. So think of black beans, pinto beans, kidney beans, red beans, great northern beans, whatever. Think of your lentils, red lentils, black lentils, green lentils, brown lentils. There's so many wonderful lentils to eat. And then different kinds of peas, but not green peas. We're thinking more split peas here and chickpeas. So think of chickpeas or garbanzo beans. They have 2 names: yellow split peas, green split peas, things like that. And soybeans fit into that first of those 3 that I named, those beans category. But they're all legumes. They're all wonderful for your health, including soy. But if you compare soy and peanuts, which are also a legume, but we happen to call them nuts because we roast them and we eat them a lot more like they kind of resemble more of a nut, like walnuts and almonds and things, the classic tree nuts. But of course, peanuts are actually legumes. They're not tree nuts.
Huh.
But peanuts and soybeans are both very rich in fat. And so that gives peanuts their characteristic rich flavor. That's what allows us to make peanut butter out of them, and it tastes so good. It's because of that high fat content. Soy is not quite as high in fat, but it's rich in fat. About 42% of its overall calories come from fat. And so that's why I would recommend people not considering it a food to eat a ton of all the time. Consider it equivalent to something like meat, even though it's certainly healthier than meat. But if you categorize it more or less based on its protein and fat content, it's classified as a medium fat kind of meat, more or less, right? Because of its high fat and high protein content. And so I would recommend not eating it more like you would eat a meat. Consider it like a garnish. Have a few pieces of some sauteed or grilled or baked tofu, in some kind of a stir fry dish with, brown rice or some other kind of whole grain, and then lots of vegetables. So it's great there. And then of course you can also have soy in another very healthy form, which is called tempeh. And tempeh is more of a whole food soy product than tofu is, right? Because tofu, we're taking those soybeans, we're taking a blade and we're blending them up until basically like a smoothie type or like a paste-like content. And then we're processing them in such a way that we just end up with that soy curd at the very end. And we lose a lot of the fiber. And with the fiber, we lose a number of other important beneficial phytonutrients. Phyto is just the scientific word for plant. That's plant nutrients. And so with the fiber goes other phytonutrients, flavonoids, all these wonderful things that we have in soy that we lose in tofu. Tofu is still good, but tempeh and edamame, of course, is just the whole soybean. You can buy it already shelled or already hulled, meaning it's been taken out of its little pod, right? Its little bean pod. or you can buy it right in the pods, and you can just steam the pods up, and then you just bite them, pop them open, and you can just pop the little edamames into your mouth. Or you can pop the little edamames into some kind of a stir-fried dish that you'd make, again, with some kind of whole grain and then a lot of veggies. But like I mentioned, so edamame is great, which is the whole soybean unprocessed. And then you also have tempeh, which is a fermented soy product, wonderfully healthy. They usually just ferment it along with a grain like brown rice or bulgur wheat or something like that. And the fermentation process is really great because then you get some of these beneficial microbes, these beneficial bacteria that are used in the fermentation process, that we then consume those. And that's really good too. And so tempeh is a really great way to consume soy also. But like I said, since it's kind of classified equivalent with like a medium fat meat, we don't want to eat it in large quantities, and probably not best also to eat it every single day. And if you do, keep the quantities really low. But that's why we have all these other wonderful legumes. More varieties better when it comes to nutrition, right? And there's a lot of good science to show that the more varieties of all different kinds of fruits, vegetables, legumes, whole intact grains, nuts and seeds, and then herbs and spices. So these are all of our wonderfully healthy whole plant foods. The more variety that we have of these things, our gut microbiome, which is the different kinds of microbiota or different types of bacteria that are living in our gut, are going to be more diverse. And the more diverse our gut is, the healthier our gut is. And then, of course, the healthier our gut is, the healthier we are as a whole as human beings. So diversity is key. So think about all those other legumes that we want to incorporate into our diet. Don't just think of soy as being the only one, because it's such a great replacement for meat if people are transitioning from a more animal product heavy diet to a more plant-rich diet, which we want to encourage everybody to do. So that being said, like I said, soy gets a bad rap. Tofu is, of course, a soy product, but there's a tremendous body of evidence, hundreds, if not thousands of studies that show that soy is protective for our health. Because it's so rich in antioxidants and all like these flavonoids and these other chemicals that are important phytonutrients, they do different things like help prevent cancer. There's been a number of studies that have shown among women who've had breast cancer, the ones who ate more soy were protected from recurrence of their cancer coming back in the future, right? So women who ate more soy were the most protected from having a recurrence of their cancer if they've already had breast cancer. And so this is really important stuff. And so soy has gotten a bad rap. Most of the GMO, which is that kind of buzzword, genetically modified organisms, most of the GMO soy is fed directly to all of the animals in our livestock industry to, fatten them up, bulk them up, and so that we can slaughter them more quickly and we can get them into the McDonald's and we can get them into all of the meats that we sell in the freezer aisle and the fresh meats that we sell in the deli, right? But again, most of that GMO soy is going to animals. And so for people that are scared about eating all this GMO soy, oh, it's so scary, oh, it's so unhealthy for me, it's best to minimize or eliminate our intake of animal products, because that's going to be one of the main sources where you're actually getting that GMO soy. The animals are going to eat it. They're going to store that food is going to be used to bulk them up, and then you're going to be eating their tissue. And so you're, in a sense, secondhand consuming all of that GMO soy. And the other predominant place that you may find GMO soy is they're going to use it in a lot of the soybean oil that's utilized in the ultra processed foods that we consume. So think of all the chips and cookies and Takis and cakes and all these different things. A lot of that soybean oil, it's a heavily processed product, is going to be pumped into all those ultra processed foods. And we all know that moving away from a processed diet and moving toward a minimally processed, again, more of a whole food diet, and specifically a whole food plant-based diet, is going to be the best thing that we can do for our health. So I hope that answers people's questions. And if there's any other questions that come up about soy, perhaps we can tackle them in a future podcast.
Sounds great. You're so informative, and I always learn something from you. Thank you.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
See you in the next episode down the line. Making Sense with Gabriel. Bye. Thank you for joining us on another episode of the Vegan Pulse. I am your host, Nancy Arenas. Remember to follow us on Facebook, like us too. Check out our blog and subscribe to our YouTube channel. You'll never miss another episode. If you have a pulse, you have a purpose. Live vegan.